In 1971, in the historic Pike Place market of Seattle, three friends decided to build something they couldn't find in their own city: a store dedicated to selling high-quality, freshly roasted coffee beans. Jerry Baldwin, an English teacher, Zev Siegel, a history teacher, and Gordon Boker, a writer, shared a simple belief that Americans deserved better coffee than what was filling supermarket shelves. They weren't chasing global fame, nor did they have a plan to create a cultural phenomenon. Their vision was modest, rooted in craft and authenticity. The name they chose, Starbucks, was inspired by the first mate in Moby Dick, a nod to Seattle's seafaring history and the romance of coffee's maritime trade routes. At the beginning, Starbucks didn't serve cups of coffee at all. Customers came in for whole beans, purchased by the pound, and brewing equipment. The shop's interior smelled of roasted beans, not steamed milk. Behind the counter, the founders explained the origins of their coffee, encouraged customers to grind their own beans, and taught them the art of brewing a rich cup at home. For the few who wandered in out of curiosity, the experience was as much educational as it was commercial. The early years were lean. Specialty coffee was far from mainstream in America. Most people saw coffee as a cheap, utilitarian drink, not a luxury worth savoring. Convincing them to pay more for beans they had to brew themselves was a challenge. Yet the founders held fast to their philosophy: no compromise on quality, no rushing growth. Every bag of beans had a story, of farmers, regions, altitudes, and that storytelling became an early hallmark of the brand. Then, in 1981, a young marketing executive named Howard Schultz walked into the store. At that time, Starbucks had just 4 locations. Schultz was struck by the aroma, the earthy textures of the store, and the way the staff spoke about coffee with almost reverent enthusiasm. He saw something more than just a small retailer. He saw the seed of a much bigger idea. The founders didn't yet realize it, but Schultz would become the figure who would redefine what Starbucks meant to the world. Schultz joined the company the following year as head of marketing. He quickly immersed himself in the details: the origins of the beans, the roasting process, the customer experience. But it wasn't until a business trip to Italy in 1983 that everything shifted for him. Walking the streets of Milan, he was captivated by the espresso bars that dotted every neighborhood. These weren't just places to drink coffee, they were hubs of conversation, community, and ritual. The baristas knew their customers' names and orders. The atmosphere was vibrant yet unpretentious, a daily gathering woven into the fabric of life. Schultz began to imagine what it would mean to bring this concept back to America. When he returned to Seattle, he pitched the idea to the founders: transform Starbucks from a bean retailer into a cafe that served espresso drinks, creating an experience around coffee rather than just selling it as a product. But Baldwin, Siegel, and Boker were reluctant. They feared it would dilute the company's identity and distract from its core mission. Schultz felt the potential was too great to ignore. The tension between tradition and innovation was growing, and it became clear that Schultz's vision would need its own space to take shape. While the founders continued their steady, small-scale approach, Schultz's imagination was already racing ahead. He understood that Americans didn't yet know they wanted this, but he believed they would once they experienced it. The challenge lay in convincing not just customers, but also the company he worked for, that this new model could succeed. Schultz was faced with a choice: stay within the safe confines of Starbucks' existing structure or step away and pursue the vision on his own. The first chapter of Starbucks' story closed not with global expansion or overnight fame, but with the quiet resilience of 3 friends holding to their ideals and the arrival of a new player who saw beyond their boundaries. The small storefront in Pike Place was still just a modest coffee retailer, but it had already become a place where ideas were brewing alongside the beans. The spark of something far larger was present, it simply hadn't yet found the fuel to ignite. From this foundation, the path forward was uncertain. But the seeds had been planted: a brand rooted in authenticity, a leader with a transformative vision, and a marketplace about to discover a new way of thinking about coffee. The journey ahead would not be straightforward, but the course had been set. All that remained was for someone to take the leap and change not only the company, but the very culture of coffee itself. Howard Schultz's time in Italy was more than an inspiring trip. It was a revelation that would define the rest of his career. Milan's coffee culture was unlike anything he had experienced in the United States. Espresso bars were not merely places to grab a quick drink, they were social institutions, alive with energy from morning until night. Customers stood shoulder to shoulder, exchanging greetings with baristas who knew them by name, sipping rich, aromatic coffee in small porcelain cups. Schultz noticed how the atmosphere invited conversation, created community, and made coffee an event rather than a transaction. This vision of coffee as an experience took hold of him. He imagined adapting the Italian model to suit American lifestyles: comfortable seating, inviting interiors, and a menu that introduced espresso-based beverages to customers unfamiliar with them. He believed that if people experienced this blend of quality and atmosphere, they would gladly make it part of their daily lives. For Schultz, the idea was not to sell coffee, but to sell a moment of connection, a ritual that could be replicated across cities and neighborhoods. When he returned to Seattle, Schultz presented his idea with enthusiasm to Starbucks founders. He described in detail how espresso drinks could complement their existing bean business, how stores could serve as third places between home and work, and how this shift could transform Starbucks from a niche retailer into a household name. But Baldwin, Siegel, and Boker were unmoved. They respected Schultz's passion but saw the idea as too far from their original mission. Their focus was on selling premium beans and equipment, not on operating cafes. They feared the complexity of running beverage service would undermine the quality control and brand identity they had worked hard to build. Schultz was deeply disappointed but not deterred. He recognized that pursuing his vision within the existing company was not possible. In 1985, with a conviction that outweighed the risks, he decided to leave Starbucks and start his own venture. Naming it Il Giornale, after the Italian word for the daily, Schultz opened his first cafe with a clear mission: bring the spirit of the Milan espresso bar to America. Il Giornale was small, but Schultz ensured that every detail mirrored the atmosphere he had admired overseas. The coffee was brewed from Starbucks beans, the menu featured espresso, cappuccino, and cafe latte, and the staff were trained to engage customers warmly, remembering their preferences. Italian opera played in the background, and customers were encouraged to linger rather than rush out. It was a gamble, but within months, Il Giornale had become a local favorite, attracting a steady stream of regulars and proving that Schultz's vision had commercial potential. 2 years later, opportunity arrived. Starbucks founders decided to sell the company. For Schultz, this was the moment to merge his dream with the brand that had sparked his passion for coffee in the first place. He moved quickly, rallying investors to raise the $3.8 million needed for the purchase. It was not easy. Many potential backers questioned whether Americans would ever embrace espresso culture on a large scale. Schultz countered with the evidence from Il Giornale's success and his unshakable belief that coffee could be more than a drink, it could be a way of life. In 1987, Schultz acquired Starbucks, merging it with Il Giornale under the Starbucks name and becoming the company's CEO. With the brand now under his control, Schultz had the freedom to fully implement his ideas. He expanded the menu to include handcrafted espresso beverages, redesigned stores to be more inviting, and emphasized service as a core part of the customer experience. From the beginning, he made it clear to employees that they were not just selling coffee, but creating a space where people could relax, connect, and feel valued. This period marked a decisive shift in Starbucks' identity. The company was no longer a small-scale retailer of beans and equipment. It had become a cafe-driven brand built around Schultz's interpretation of Italian coffee culture. The risks were significant. Expansion required capital, consistency across stores was difficult, and building a customer base for a new kind of coffee house in America was uncharted territory. But Schultz's combination of determination, storytelling, and attention to detail gave Starbucks the momentum to move from a regional business to a company with national aspirations. The transformation was not instant, but it was irreversible. Schultz had taken Starbucks through a turning point where vision overruled caution, where the definition of success expanded beyond selling premium beans to creating an enduring customer experience. The stage was now set for Starbucks to scale its new identity far beyond Seattle, changing the way the world thought about coffee and beginning a chapter that would test whether a cultural import from Italy could truly thrive on a global stage. With Starbucks under Howard Schultz's leadership, the focus shifted to building not just a place to buy coffee, but a consistent and recognizable experience customers could trust in any location. Schultz understood that for the brand to stand out in a market where coffee was still largely a functional purchase, every element, from product quality to environment, needed to feel intentional and distinctive. He positioned Starbucks as what he called a third place, separate from home and work, where people could slow down and feel connected. The store layout was carefully considered to encourage this sense of belonging. Lighting was warm, seating areas were designed to invite lingering, and every detail, from the music to the aroma of freshly ground beans, was curated to create an atmosphere that felt comfortable yet elevated. The logo was modernized while retaining its nautical roots, making it both distinctive and approachable. The green siren symbol became a visual shorthand for quality coffee and a familiar landmark in cities. At the heart of the brand's appeal was its beverage lineup. Schultz expanded the menu far beyond traditional drip coffee, introducing handcrafted espresso drinks such as cappuccinos, macchiatos, and the soon-to-be-famous café latte. These offerings gave customers a reason to visit frequently, since each drink could be customized to individual tastes. Seasonal beverages like the pumpkin spice latte and holiday-themed drinks later became cultural touchstones, driving anticipation and loyalty. The introduction of cold-blended drinks, most notably the Frappuccino in the mid-1990s, attracted a younger audience and extended the appeal beyond hot coffee drinkers. The emphasis on consistency was non-negotiable. Schultz made sure that a cappuccino in Chicago tasted the same as one in Seattle. Achieving this meant investing heavily in employee training. Starbucks referred to employees as partners, a deliberate choice to instill a sense of ownership and pride in their work. Partners were trained not just in the mechanics of making drinks, but in customer interaction, remembering orders, and delivering service that felt personal. This philosophy helped create a bond between staff and customers that became a competitive advantage. Compensation and benefits reinforced that culture. Starbucks offered healthcare benefits and stock options even to part-time employees, an uncommon practice in the retail industry. These policies weren't just altruistic. Schultz believed that happy, invested partners would naturally create better customer experiences, which in turn would strengthen the brand. As the concept proved itself in Seattle, expansion became the next priority. Starbucks moved into other U.S. cities, targeting locations with dense foot traffic, affluent demographics, and a growing appetite for premium coffee experiences. The brand entered college campuses, business districts, and shopping centers, adapting store sizes and formats to fit each environment, while keeping the core design consistent. The strategy was to make Starbucks visible and accessible enough to become part of customers' daily routines. Marketing played a quieter role than in many consumer brands, relying more on the in-store experience and word of mouth than on heavy advertising. Schultz believed that the best marketing happened when a customer had such a positive interaction that they told others about it. The stores themselves functioned as living advertisements, with their distinctive scent, design, and barista interactions reinforcing the brand identity. Starbucks also focused on sourcing and quality control to support its premium positioning. The company built long-term relationships with coffee growers, prioritizing high-quality Arabica beans and developing ethical sourcing programs that would later evolve into comprehensive sustainability initiatives. Roasting was treated as an art, with centralized facilities ensuring uniform flavor profiles. Customers could buy whole beans in-store, reinforcing Starbucks' roots in the retail coffee business even as the cafe model dominated its growth. By the early 1990s, the transformation was unmistakable. Starbucks had moved from being a niche coffee retailer to a cultural presence. It wasn't only about caffeine, it was about a lifestyle that suggested a certain pace, a certain set of values, and a willingness to pay for quality and comfort. Customers didn't just leave with a beverage, they left with a small ritual, a few minutes of connection, and a brand that had woven itself into their routines. This foundation, a consistent customer experience, a distinctive brand identity, and a culture that valued employees, gave Starbucks the platform it needed to expand on a scale that would have been unthinkable in its early years. The company had not yet conquered the globe, but the blueprint for doing so was firmly in place, ready to be executed in markets far beyond the United States. With its U.S. presence firmly established, Starbucks turned its attention outward. The first step into international markets came in 1996 with a store in Tokyo, a deliberate choice reflecting both the city's dense population and its receptiveness to premium Western brands. The move was not simply a matter of duplicating the American model. Starbucks adapted its menu and store design to fit local culture while preserving the brand's signature elements. In Japan, smaller cup sizes were introduced, matcha-based beverages were added, and certain store interiors reflected Japanese aesthetics. This approach of balancing global consistency with local customization became a cornerstone of the company's expansion strategy. From there, Starbucks entered markets across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. In each location, the company studied local tastes and habits. In China, where tea culture dominated, Starbucks positioned coffee as an aspirational, modern beverage, often targeting younger consumers and urban professionals. In markets like the UK, Starbucks emphasized its espresso expertise to differentiate itself from traditional cafes. Over time, the brand became synonymous with a certain urban lifestyle, its green logo serving as a recognizable marker in city centers around the world. This rapid growth created what analysts began calling the Starbucks effect, a visible shift in coffee consumption patterns wherever the brand appeared. Competitors rushed to introduce espresso drinks and upscale cafe environments. Local chains imitated the ambience, and multinational rivals like Costa Coffee and Dunkin' Donuts expanded aggressively to compete. While this cemented Starbucks' role as an industry leader, it also meant that the novelty of the cafe experience diminished, forcing the company to keep innovating to maintain its edge. Expansion at such a pace carried risks. Store saturation in certain regions began to dilute sales, and not every market embraced the Starbucks model. In some places, the brand was criticized for contributing to the homogenization of local culture, with opponents arguing that its presence displaced independent coffee shops. Others pointed to the pricing strategy, seeing Starbucks as emblematic of corporate overreach. These criticisms grew louder during economic downturns, when discretionary spending tightened and customers questioned the value of paying a premium for coffee. The 2008 financial crisis brought these challenges into sharp focus. Starbucks experienced declining traffic in many locations, particularly in the United States, where overexpansion had left weaker stores vulnerable. Share prices fell, and questions arose about whether the brand's best days were behind it. In response, Schultz, who had stepped down as CEO in 2000, returned to the role in early 2008. His diagnosis was blunt. The company had lost some of the operational discipline and customer focus that had fueled its rise. Schultz initiated a series of changes aimed at restoring the brand's strength. Hundreds of underperforming stores were closed, expansion plans were slowed, and renewed emphasis was placed on barista training and beverage quality. In an unprecedented move, Starbucks closed all of its U.S. stores for a few hours one afternoon to retrain staff on the fundamentals of espresso preparation. This symbolic act sent a clear message that quality would not be sacrificed for speed or volume. Technology became a critical part of the turnaround. Starbucks launched a rewards program tied to a digital app, allowing customers to collect points, receive personalized offers, and pay seamlessly through their phones. Mobile ordering was introduced, reducing wait times and catering to busy professionals. These initiatives strengthened customer loyalty and generated valuable data for tailoring promotions and product development. The company also began experimenting with new store formats to adapt to changing consumer habits. Drive-through locations expanded in suburban areas, while smaller express stores catered to commuters in dense urban centers. Internationally, Starbucks opened flagship stores designed as immersive experiences, showcasing rare coffees and high-end brewing methods to reinforce its premium image. By the early 2010s, These efforts had stabilized the business and set it back on a growth trajectory. Starbucks had weathered one of the most challenging periods in its history by confronting overexpansion, reaffirming its core values, and embracing technological innovation. The combination of global scale, strong brand recognition, and a renewed focus on execution positioned the company to not only maintain its dominance but to continue shaping coffee culture on a worldwide scale. The next phase would be about balancing this scale with sustainability and evolving consumer expectations, ensuring that the brand's influence endured well beyond its initial wave of expansion. Starbucks emerged from its period of restructuring with a clear understanding that maintaining relevance required more than operational discipline. It demanded a forward-looking vision. The company began articulating its identity not just as a purveyor of coffee, but as a brand with a social and environmental conscience. Sustainability became a central focus, with commitments to ethically sourced coffee through its coffee and farmer equity practices, investments in farmer support centers, and loans to help producers improve quality and yield. These programs aim to secure long-term supply while appealing to customers increasingly aware of the origins of their purchases. Environmental responsibility extended into store operations. Starbucks introduced initiatives to reduce waste, such as offering discounts for customers who brought reusable cups, piloting cup recycling programs, and testing compostable materials. Energy-efficient equipment and store designs were implemented to lower the brand's carbon footprint. These moves were not purely symbolic. They addressed growing consumer demand for corporate accountability and positioned Starbucks as a leader among global food and beverage brands in sustainability efforts. Product innovation continued to play a critical role in keeping the menu aligned with shifting tastes. Plant-based options expanded rapidly, from dairy alternatives like almond, oat, and soy milk to food offerings catering to vegetarian and vegan diets. Health-conscious beverages with reduced sugar, cold brews, and nitro coffee options appealed to younger demographics seeking variety and novelty. Seasonal promotions retained their power to generate excitement, but the company also invested in year-round staples that kept traffic steady between promotional cycles. Technology deepened its integration into the Starbucks experience. The mobile app evolved into one of the most widely used in the retail sector, with features allowing customers to customize orders, locate stores, and redeem loyalty rewards effortlessly. Personalized marketing, driven by data analytics, enabled the company to target offers with precision, increasing engagement and purchase frequency. Partnerships with delivery platforms further expanded accessibility, catering to consumers who wanted Starbucks products without visiting a physical store. Global expansion continued, but with a more measured approach than in the early 2000s. New markets were selected based on growth potential and the ability to adapt to local culture without losing brand coherence. In regions where Starbucks was already established, growth came from diversifying formats, drive-thrus, airport locations, high-end reserve roasteries, and community-oriented neighborhood cafes. The brand was increasingly adept at tailoring the experience to fit both high-traffic metropolitan areas and smaller markets with different customer dynamics. Beyond growth metrics, Starbucks worked to solidify its cultural position. The brand's stores became informal venues for remote work, social gatherings, and study sessions, reinforcing its role as the third place, even in an era dominated by digital interactions. While competition in the specialty coffee sector intensified, Starbucks retained an advantage through its scale, ability to innovate quickly, and strong emotional connection with customers. Howard Schultz eventually transitioned leadership to new executives, ensuring continuity in vision while allowing fresh perspectives to guide the company's direction. Under new leadership, Starbucks expanded its corporate mission to include a stronger focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, setting measurable goals for representation and workplace culture. These initiatives aligned with broader societal conversations, helping the brand maintain relevance among socially conscious consumers. Financial performance reflected the resilience of the model. Even in periods of economic uncertainty or shifting consumer behavior, Starbucks leveraged its loyal customer base, diversified menu, and operational flexibility to sustain revenue growth. The combination of in-store sales, digital engagement, and delivery partnerships created multiple channels for customer interaction, reducing reliance on any single revenue stream. The company's journey from a small Seattle retailer to a global brand was the product of vision, adaptability, and a willingness to challenge its own limits. Starbucks built its success on more than coffee. It built it on an experience that millions of people around the world integrated into their daily lives. Its ability to evolve without losing the essence of its brand ensured that it remained not only relevant but influential in shaping global coffee culture. Today, Starbucks stands as both a symbol and a case study, a reminder that growth is sustained not just by expansion, but by a continuous reimagining of what the brand can be. From a single storefront selling beans to an international network of cafes and digital platforms, the company has demonstrated that a clear mission, paired with the agility to adapt, can transform a local business into a cultural institution. Its legacy is still being written, but the foundation is strong enough to ensure that Starbucks will continue influencing how the world drinks coffee for decades to come.